Hello, Yakri here with another Artifact video. So this time I want to talk about the concept of countering your opponent in Artifact. It's a little bit different than it is in other games, I think. And you might be thinking now even, there aren't any counter spells in Artifact, Yakri. What are you talking about? That's a Magic the Gathering thing. Well, there aren't any counter spells in Artifact, but there are ways to counter your opponent, and I do mean it in the same sense as a counter spell, right? Where you can prevent your opponent from doing whatever it is that they wanted to do, potentially, in Artifact. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's a lot more interesting, I think, in Artifact than it is in other card games that have counter spells. So you can do it a lot more often, and it takes more skill, I think. So the initiative system, we're going to be talking about that in a lot of videos I make because it's very core to the game. It allows for you to potentially counter pretty much anything that your opponent does. There are basically two ways you can counter your opponent, and there are a couple of different types of counters that you can utilize. So first off, there's the obvious method of just playing a action to counteract whatever your opponent just did, right? Reactively. So your opponent damages a hero, you healing potion them so they can't be killed in the future. There you go. It's a reactive counterplay, right? It might prevent your opponent from doing some follow-up they had to that, but it's not what we're really want to focus on here. The less obvious way to do this is to utilize initiative to predictively counter your opponent. Suppose you're in the top lane, like we are in this little paused video here. Again, this is the footage of the IGN dev versus dev video of Valve developers playing, and no one manages to actually pull this off here, unfortunately. I haven't seen it happen a whole lot, or at all. At least it's kind of hard to tell, in the one-sided gameplay where you can't see the Dire's hand. So you can't see it, but over in the middle lane, which we'll get to in a second, you have two heroes at like 8 and 6 hit points respectively, and it's turn 4, right? So you have 7 mana in each lane. And Dire has Zeus, right? So he has the ability to play Thunder God's Wrath here. Okay. And in the next lane, he has Conflagration. So if you and Zeus is in that lane. So if Radiant here passes into that lane, or if goes into that lane, right? And he doesn't have initiative, Dire can cast Thunder God's Wrath, and that will kill off his, it'll kill off 2 of his heroes, right? And he actually makes the situation for himself even worse. I don't know if it's totally a misplay because he does kind of clear out top lane, but arguably, I think it is. Dire does not have a blue hero in the 3rd lane, so there's something he could have done about this, and he did not. Okay, so let's say you want to counter that play. What you can do is right about here, right? The Dire uses Jimui the Wise's passive ability. So if Radiant passes right now and keeps passing until Dire passes, right, he could counter that play in that lane. Now, it's possible in this particular scenario that Dire could cast Thunder God's Wrath right now from this lane. However, there's something to note about that. So I believe Zeus's passive will not trigger because the spell is cast in the top lane. So that means that Dire will get 1 less hero kill, 2 less hero kills out of this, right? So he's going to duel Jimui with Pugna. And if he does that, Pugna dies to Thunder God's Wrath. If he doesn't do that, Pugna survives Thunder God's Wrath, and who else survives it? Legion Commander survives Thunder God's Wrath. And if he waits until middle lane and uses Duel on Zeus, he ends up, I think, winning both lanes more because he has 6 damage going into the top tower, and he has, I don't know, like 4 or 6 more damage going into the middle tower, and Dire no longer has a hero in middle, right? Yeah, it's pretty great. When you get back to top lane, then Jimui is probably going to drop Thunder God's Wrath and kill someone, but he only is going to do it after taking more tower damage. So yeah, this is kind of like the less obvious way to counter your opponent. You know that they're going to do something in the next lane, for example, and you take initiative so that you can use a spell to counter them. There are other ways to do this. You can cast Hand of God, you can cast all sorts of things, like Hand of God, Coup de Grace, Truth to Power, you could cast Time of Triumph, for example, and your opponent can still use the spell later, but you can potentially use this to kind of bait your opponent into holding on to a card, and then you counter it, right? And then they have to maybe hold on to the card for a full another round, right? Or maybe even longer to get the setup to actually get value out of it. And just having these cards like locked in their hand, not getting value turn after turn, hopefully means that you'll be getting advantage in lanes, getting towers lower on HP, and so on. So that's why it has value. So in some cases, you know, preempting this kind of play can outright win you the game, right? If this round is the round that matters, then that's incredibly important. But what he does is he uses Duel here, right? And takes out Jamui the Wise. Jamui. Your boy Jamoy. Takes him out, putting Pugna at 4 HP. I kind of almost feel like he looks at Zeus and realizes he kind of fucked up there, but he's gonna get some value out of it. But he doesn't put I don't know why he puts that in that bottom lane. Anyway, this isn't commentary about this game. Anyhow, does some more actions. Dire very solidly has initiative, and just a second here, let's skip ahead. We're going to middle lane. So now Dire has initiative, conflagration, it gets all these heroes low. Okay, so yeah. Now he could have dueled Zeus if he had initiative right now and take Zeus out, but instead we have Thunder God's Wrath, 1, 2, and then it's going to be 3 because of Zeus's passive, right? Boom. Okay. So, yeah, in Magic the Gathering, let's take this one comparison before I call it good for this video, right? In Magic the Gathering, I'm not going to say counter spells are less skillful than an artifact, but they have a very different way of being played, right? Or well, maybe I will say they're less skillful than Artifact. I won't say they're unskillful, right? I think counter spells are a very high skill mechanic. However, they have a pretty high skill floor, as it were, right? You can't fuck. There's only so far you can fuck them up, because as long as you cast them to counter an ability or a spell that an opponent plays, you're getting at least 1-for-1 value. You stop them from using something by using one of your own things, right? And there are some mind games you can play with counter spells, but at a basic level, you can see an opponent playing something that will win them the game, and you counter it, and it's countered, and then you don't lose the game, right? Very simple. In Artifact, at a basic level, that sort of exists too, but I think it's worked into all of your plays, right? So you have something like Time of Triumph. You can play that to win the game. You can also play it to counteract your units taking a lot of damage. Like, they've already taken a lot of damage, you want to heal them up, you play Time of Triumph, right? Or you can realize that your opponent is going to wipe your board on one lane and then preemptively, aggressively pass in a turn to gain initiative so that you can Time of Triumph to preemptively prevent those units from being wiped, okay? So there's a lot of complexity in a system that's kind of simpler, right? There are no counter spells. Instead, we just have cards that you can play, and you can potentially use them as counters to things that your opponent will do. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. I really like that in Artifact, not least because I was a long-time control player in Magic the Gathering, and I actually think playing control-type decks is going to be very interesting in Artifact, and we'll have some of that gameplay spill over into all types of decks. So I'm excited for it. Well, thank you all for watching, and if you like this content, you want to see more like it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's all for now. Yakri out.